Hey, can you hear me? I can't hear you, but you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
How are you?
Oh, all right. There are 27 people in the waiting room, and it is climbing.
Oh, is that right? That's
And
wonderful.
yeah, it's crazy. There may be more people because some people may come for each section. I split it
Right.
up. I I feel like if I did it again, I wouldn't split it up like that. But I did this time, which it's not bad. But I'm just like I don't know exactly how long it'll take or whatever. But we'll work
Wing
through
it.
the hour. Yeah, exactly. The good thing is no one's paying for this, so nobody can get mad at me if they don't
There are
like
no
it.
paying customers. There are no returns.
Yeah,
Either like it
exactly.
or
On
GTFO.
exactly. Exactly. But
So what
yeah.
exactly am I doing?
Okay, so I basically I'll start us out and then I'll introduce you and I'll be like, and here is Gonzalo. And you can just tell them your story, whatever you want to tell them. I think you'll do it twice unless it seems redundant. Like a lot of this that's the problem with this, and I'm gonna let everyone in a second. But my plan, like I have a PowerPoint and it includes stuff for the written, and then I have the same PowerPoint with stuff for the oral. So I think we'll see if people are staying or not, and
Okay.
then you may end up doing it twice. But basically, I'll cue you in, and then after that, just like be helpful in the chat or if I need anything, and I'll make you co-host actually, and that way make co-host.
I'm trying to find my notes from the one I did last week.
Okay, I am gonna let people in now because it's 7 o'clock and I like to be prompt. You
Yeah.
ready?
Yes.
All right.
Oh my God.
Welcome, everybody. Come on in, get settled. It's very strange to have our. You're already where you are. Enjoy yourselves at home. Make yourselves at home, not in my office.
Mhm.
Nice to see everyone. Wow, 34 people. All
Amazing.
right. Cool. Well, let's get started. There will probably be people filtering in as we continue. This has been set up so that we will start the first hour focusing on the written exam, and then the second hour focusing on the oral exam. You're all welcome to stay for the whole thing. I've never done one of these before, so the way that I planned it is that we'll just we'll go over some stuff. Basically, I was planning on having an informal chat, and then when 100 people signed up, I was like, okay, I better put together a PowerPoint. So I have a PowerPoint for everyone. In a second, I'll actually introduce myself so you know who I am, and I'll share what I have with you. But the idea of this was also that it just be kind of a space for everybody to talk to each other and to share ideas and resources, maybe even form some study partners. So I welcome your participation, and I'm here supposed to be less in teacher capacity and more in moderator, but then I made a PowerPoint, so we'll see how that goes. All right, so I am gonna open that up now, and as people keep joining, and actually, Gonzalo, do you have the ability to admit people, or is that not work as co-host?
So apparently I do. I just didn't know I was. I didn't know I had that security clearance.
Okay, I've given you security clearance. You may now welcome people in from the waiting room.
Cool.
All right, enjoy the power.
So I can kick people
Gonzalo
out too.
Gonzalo sent me a message yesterday. He was like, "Do you need some help with this?" And I was like, "Sure, that would be wonderful." So thank you, Gonzalo, for
My
all my.
pleasure.
All right, so this is our federal exam coffee hour. Is anyone drinking coffee? Who's got
Yes,
coffee?
as a matter of fact, I just made a fresh pot.
Oh, lovely. I was thinking
Water.
maybe I should have made it the federal exam happy hour. Maybe we'll do that next time.
I have
All
a
right.
bottle of rum here.
Okay, there we go. All right, so perfect way to talk about the federal exam. So this is the informal chat. My company is Athena Sky Interpreting, so that's why that name is there. And this is today, and here we are. So without further ado, I wanted to say welcome to our first ever coffee hours. It is really impressive to see how many people were interested in this. I thought that it would be something that people wanted, but wow, thank you all for coming. I'm honored that you're spending your Tuesday evening with me. Recording, see, this is why I put PowerPoints so that I remember to do things like start the recording. So I'm going to start the recording. Oh, I started it already. Oh, I think I made it automatic. That was very smart of me. Okay, good. All right, so we have the recording now. All right, so I think you all know Zoom by now because the entire world has gone on Zoom. But do please make sure that you stay muted at all times unless you are speaking. And then when you are done speaking, mute yourself again because we all love you, but we don't love your dogs and your children and your buses and fire alarms. So use your mute button. Participation, the whole point of this is for us to participate, but there are a lot of people. So just try to, limit yourself to a few words. And I love that everybody has their webcams on. It's nice to be able to see people's faces. So if you're able to do that, then that's wonderful. All right, that's that. I think that it's possible. Wow, we're up to 46 participants. I'm going to sort of gauge who comes and who goes because some of this may get repeated for the second hour or not if it's just everybody's here for the whole thing. So yeah, I just wanted to get to know you a little bit as we get started. So feel free to put in the chat. I can actually, no, yeah, I've never tried the poll function. I'm not going to try it now. Put in the chat. Where are you? Have you tried the exam already? Favorite practice method. You may answer one or all or two of those questions. Just curious to see what kind of a group we've got here. Okay, Joyzy, very nice. Me too, also from Joyzy. Las Vegas, El Paso, Florida, Idaho. Oh man, Zoom is cool, Tennessee,
10th
Arizona.
person to answer gets a special prize.
You're offering the prize, you have to provide it, Gonzalo. Connecticut, wow. Okay, afterward I'm gonna have to count how many states this is. This is a lot of states. Nice. I see a couple people marking in terms of have they tried the exam already. I saw one person said that they were trying it for the first time. Anyone else, feel free, you don't have to tell us, but if you want to let us know. First time, we have some first timers here. And when I say first, maybe tell us whether you're here for the written or the oral. Okay, we have somebody past the written. Okay, so
Athena, I'm sorry to interrupt. I took the exam in 2011. That was my first time. I didn't pass.
okay, and that was written?
Yes.
Got it. Okay, so all right, so we have a bunch of people here for, it seems like the majority of people right now are here for the written, so we may be having some people joining us in the second hour for the oral. All right, I want to congratulate everybody who's here. Those of you who are here just for the first time, it's a huge project you're endeavoring to go on, and I applaud you. And for those of you who are trying the same exam a second time, or even a third time, or a fourth, that's perseverance, and it's impressive, and it's scary and it's brave. So I'm here to support you with that. Cool, and I see a lot of people who were able to pass, and they're now onto the oral, which is awesome too. Cool. Great. All right, so this is my last one. I haven't asked this question before, and I'm curious to see what the answers are. Favorite practice method?
How many methods are there?
I don't know. That's what I'm curious about. Working as part of a team. Oh, that's definitely from Tony. Tony's our team leader over there. With a friend. Okay. Group practice. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so a bunch of people are saying group practice is their favorite. Now, what about when your group practice turns into your group coffee chat and then it turns into your rum drinking and then you don't get your work done? I speak from personal experience. It never happened. I like it. All right. Video recording. Yes. Yes. Record yourself. Watch yourself. Nope, never happened. I like you guys. This is fun. All right, cool. Just waiting for a few more answers if anyone else wants to say anything, and then I'll switch over. I didn't specify. I guess this first hour, I don't know if I should have done like this. Maybe I should have mixed written and oral, but in any case, whatever you want. But the first hour, we are focusing on written. Study group, lots of mock exams, especially for the written exam. I encourage, well, for all exams, really, mock exams are important. Making glossaries based on TV series or films. Man, it's so much fun to be with fellow language nerds. I love it. And please know that I say that with the utmost respect because it's how I refer to myself. So, all right. Okay, cool. Thank you. I'm sure there's more to know about all of you, but this gives, I think, all of us a good impression of who's in the room. Yay. All right, I'm going to close the chat so you can keep on participating. Gonzalo has promised to keep an eye on the chat as well, but I might not see it, so that's okay, but just FYI. All right. So I wanted to tell you a little bit of who I am, and then offer you some of my tips, and then open the floor to all of you. So I'm Athena. I never know how to do this part. So well, this is what I wrote for my federal exam anyway. So the first bullet point is thank goodness for pushy colleagues. The whole reason that I went through this ridiculous process of getting federally certified. That's a good one. And I haven't even had anything to drink. Okay, so the whole point of getting federally certified, the reason that I did it is because I had a colleague, an amazing woman. Those of you who interpret in New Jersey may be able to guess who I'm referring to here. But she said to me, Athena, you have to take the federal exam. And I was like, why do I have to take it? She's like, you have to. It's this really amazing credential. You've got to do it. So she basically bullied me into, and I say bully fondly, but she did bully me into taking the federal exam. And if you know me, you know that I take things seriously. So once I embark in a project, then it just goes nuts. So I spent a bunch of months studying for the written exam, and it was a pain in the butt, and it wasn't fun. And I honestly, when I walked out of there, I did not know if I had passed or not. I think now you take the exam and you get your results right away. But when I took it back in my day, that's not how it worked. So I had to wait, and the results arrived in the mail one day, and I had passed. And I have to tell you, I was a little bit like, I just didn't know. It is a really hard exam. And this is from somebody who, like, English is my native language. I feel very comfortable in English. I went to college in English. The English section of this exam was challenging for me, let alone the Spanish section, which, you know, is my second language, and I didn't start to learn until I was a teenager. So I did study and I did practice, and I ended up passing, but I just have to say that those of you who didn't necessarily pass in the first time, I totally understand. It is a really, really hard exam. So then I get my results and I'm like, oh, because now that I've passed, it means that I have to keep studying. So I have to, like, honestly, it's not that I wanted to fail, but I was almost like, oh, well, if I don't, then I don't. Because now all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I have another exam looming, which I think is the story of my life. I guess secretly I like exams. They do help motivate me, and they help me like reach new levels, because when I'm working toward an exam, I don't know, it's a tangible goal. And then afterward, like, I can maybe earn a check mark, and I like check marks. So I formed a group called Federal Interpreters or Bust, which you may have heard of because I really like the name, and so I keep on assigning it to workshops that I teach or Facebook groups that I lead. And we got together. Well, this was back before the days of like Skype, and well, I mean, it's not that it was before Skype and Zoom, but we just didn't use it. And it's interesting. We did our whole study group through email. I kind of wish we'd had like our WhatsApp groups and our Zoom chats and everything like that. But we checked in with each other with our monthly objectives. We talked about how our studies were going, and we shared glossaries. We created glossaries together, and I will direct you toward those glossaries and share them with you because they've given me permission to share them with my students and my colleagues. So I'll share them with you. But we created glossaries. We created a whole bunch of specialized glossaries like DNA and firearms and things that can come up in the expert witness section of the oral exam. And we made audio glossaries where you're listening to the term in English, and then there's a pause, and there's a term in Spanish. So we created those for each other, and then every day on my commute, I would listen to those glossaries. So the study group was really helpful for moral support and resource sharing, and I studied my butt off. So that was basically my journey with the federal exam, and I did end up passing the oral exam, and since then, I actually haven't done a lot of work in federal court. At the time that I passed the federal exam, I was already a staff interpreter in New Jersey. So I've worked for the last 10 years, first as a freelance interpreter, then as a staff interpreter. And then more recently, I moved to Montreal, Canada, and I just finished my graduate school studies, and I officially have my master's in conference interpreting now. So I'm working to get my foot in the door as a conference interpreter, and I also lead trainings like this one. So that's me. I wanted to share my story. I wanted next, yeah, because we have an hour. So I'm gonna have I think that's the next thing we're doing. Hang on. Yep. I'm gonna have Gonzalo share his story in a moment, and then I'm gonna walk you through some resources and tips that I have for the written exam. And once I've shared what I have to share, I'll open it up to all of you. And if you have any special requests or you're looking for anything in particular, tell me now in the chat rather than later, because then later it'll be too late. Let me know. And Gonzalo, the floor is yours.
All right. Well, thank you. So I see some familiar names here. Some of you that know me, my name is Gonzalo Tovar. I am Chilean. I am based in Jersey, and I've been interpreting since 2013 for different state courts and in the private sector. And I've been federal since this year. Actually got the results right before the zombie apocalypse. And besides that, I've also worked in the sporting realm. I've been fortunate enough to work for a professional soccer team from this area called New York Red Bulls. I've also worked with Real Madrid. I've done some conference work, etc., etc. But mostly state work, and I was hoping to work in federal courts in the federal realm until obviously COVID hit. Um, I took the exam last year. It was my second time taking the written, which I took the first time in 2016. And I took the oral in December. And I was fortunate enough. I'd like to think that I worked hard enough that I actually passed both. And I was also fortunate enough to have Athena as my private instructor throughout the summer. I had private lessons with her over Zoom, I believe. That was actually one of the first times I used Zoom a year before it became a thing. So she was great. So, FYI, if you guys need a teacher when the time comes, I would highly recommend that you speak with Athena. Athena, do you want me to talk about the written or?
Yeah, so talk about the written, I guess. And I didn't tell Gonzalo to say that, but thank you. But it was him. He studied like crazy. You should have seen his color-coded charts that he used to, to study for the oral exam. So anyway, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say color coded charts is where it's at. Made a huge difference. So I basically made it my mission last year to pass both the written and the oral. So before I talk about the oral, I'm going to talk about my experience with the written. And as I mentioned before, I took it in 2016, and I didn't study a whole lot. To be honest, I actually did not really study. Um, and I almost passed, which was kind of frustrating and kind of rewarding at the same time. Frustrating because obviously I couldn't go on to the next chapter, but rewarding in the sense that I figured if I study and actually apply myself, then I should be good to go. So that's what I did last year. I just set out on studying, and that's what I did for the entire year when it comes to the written. And some of you that were at a different presentation last week with somebody else, I'm going to talk about some of the same things. And then I'm also going to talk about the oral, which we didn't get to talk about last week. But in terms of the written, what I thought would be a good idea at first was to take some practice exams and obviously gauge how I did, gauge my performance, and from then figure out if there was a specific area of need that I should focus on more. And on the contrary, see if there was any one area in which I excelled. So it just turned out that I was kind of not doing great in any of the areas. So I decided to just study everything, grammar, etc., spelling, error detection, and in both languages. Now, granted, like I said, I'm from Chile. I came here when I was 12. So even though Spanish is my first language, my formal schooling, high school, college, real jobs have all taken place in an Anglo setting. So I did think that I needed to focus a little bit more on the Spanish, and I would just study every day. In terms of specifics, I I did a lot of reading, and one of the things that I notice in terms of reading specifically is that if you do, for instance, most of you guys might have come across the mock exams from the Arizona Institute of Interpretation, which are very difficult. I haven't met a single person that has gotten an 80 or a high 70 in those. So it can be very discouraging, but and especially the reading comprehension, because it does look very convoluted. And I actually had a friend of mine who went to school to become an English teacher. He graduated with a degree in English or literature, and he said that it was purposely written in a way that gets confusing. It is convoluted. It is meant to somewhat frustrate you. And what I could say is that those exams, that exam is a lot harder than the actual written exam, in my opinion. And I just went on from there, started studying, and I try to be efficient in terms of the quality of my studying. So what I would do is I would read at least 5 things in each language each day. And I would typically The Economist, for instance. Somebody recommended New York Times. It just so happens that my dad is subscribed to The Economist. I prefer The Economist personally. In Spanish, you want to try to read things like El Comercio, El País, El Tiempo, El Mercurio, Infobae from Argentina has tons of judicial type articles every day. By the way, Athena, if I get too long winded with anything, you just let me know. Um,
Okay, well, I think you've shared a lot of information. There was one question in the chat, which was whether or not you studied in a team. So if you want to tell us that.
so for the written, I did not. For the oral, I most definitely did, and I would say that was a crucial part of my success. So I think the entire team is here. So shout out to you, girls. So I would definitely recommend studying for the oral in a group setting. For the written, some of the things that I did in terms of group setting, I took as many classes as I took. I think, Athena, you may have had something, and then I think De La Mora may have had something, and then basically all the companies have something in terms of FCIC written prep. I decided to participate in all of them. I signed up for all of them, and then I would just meet people. And typically, what I did was create or join WhatsApp groups. Well, you can join it. I mean, like Facebook Messenger. The point is that you join groups and then you can share information. Sometimes you can share materials, et cetera, et cetera. And that's what we did. Or sometimes when you have questions, I have a good friend of mine that's on here, Felix. He is actually an interpreter based out of Caracas. So obviously his interpretation and upbringing has been mostly in the sense that Spanish is what he hears most of the day, more formal Spanish than me. So, for instance, when I had questions that I couldn't, my dad didn't have time to answer since he works nights, I would typically speak to Felix, just as one example. So, what I'm trying to say specifically is that if you have a group, ideally you want to try to combine different strengths. So, people that may be stronger in Spanish, don't have five in a group of 5 people, don't have 5 people. Those 5 people should not be all, ideally, their A language should not be Spanish. Or if you have some people that are based abroad, I think that would be helpful.
Absolutely. Okay, so I'm going to swoop in here. Thank you. There's a bunch of requests for the names of the periodicals. I tried to keep up and put some of them in the chat, but what I think I'm going to also ask is that Gonzalo send me a list, and I'm going to send everyone a summary once this is done with all the resources that I've mentioned or that other people have mentioned. In order to compile that, I may ask some of you, if you mentioned something in particular, email it to me, and that way I can put it all as part of one follow-up. I have most of your email addresses. If I don't have your email address, it's because somebody forwarded you the link or because you came through the Future Fedes Facebook group and I didn't get your email addresses. So if you want the follow-up, and to be part of my mailing list, then I'll put a link in the chat in a little while, and you can sign up to get my emails, and then that'll include the follow-up email from this conversation.
And Athena, if I may, I actually have an email that I've sent out with basically all the resources that I have for the written.
Awesome.
So I'll send that to you, and then you can just share it with everyone.
Awesome. Okay, thank you so much.
You
Cool.
got it.
And also consider, So I'm not a huge fan of social media, but it really helps to bring us all together, especially in this crazy world right now. So if anyone is not in the Future Fedes Facebook group, I'm going to put that in the chat, Future Fedes. And you're on Facebook, consider joining, because it's a great place where you can pool resources like this and have that conversation going. Okay, so I wanted to share some of my tips and resources, and then we'll open the floor to questions or to people who want to share their own experiences. So general exam tips. This is for any exam you ever take. Stop introducing new material a week or so before the test. In other words, the day before the written exam is not the day that you should suddenly, decide to like memorize 20 new pieces of terminology, right? That's not the day to perfect your reading comprehension. To prepare for this exam takes time, and for your brain to absorb information takes time. So there's nothing you can do in like the last few days before the exam that you haven't already done that's gonna like tip it over, And if you think that way, you'll start getting, well, probably you'll start getting stressed out, and that'll inhibit your performance on the day of the exam. So I really encourage you to not introduce new material starting about a week before the test. And to stop studying altogether, I put a few days before the test. I know we're all nerdy perfectionists in here, and especially Gonzalo. I don't think you listened when I told you to stop studying. Did you? No, he's shaking his head. He did not stop studying. But
Never.
Don't be, and he passed. So, maybe it was good that he didn't follow my advice. But do what you need to do to take care of yourself. That's my main point. If you feel energized and excited by studying, and you're not going to get discouraged if you suddenly really realize that there's information you don't have, fine. But if you could easily get thrown off, if you could like lose your excitement about it, then don't do anything that'll scare you in those few days leading up to the exam. To take care of your physical health, I'm saying this and it's like, of course, but like seriously, eat well, sleep well, exercise. That's important for your brain. And our brains are working hard in this stuff. So really take care of yourself. Know the route to get to the test. So look it up. I've actually had students drive like a practice run so that they know exactly where they're going. I wouldn't, if you want to do that, fine. I'm not going to tell you have to, but know where you're going. Know the route and plan for there to be traffic. Plan for there to be an accident. Plan for there to be problems so you are not stressed out in traffic on your way to the exam. Also, find out everything you can about the test in advance. And that's part of why I'm doing this info session, because knowledge is power. And when you walk in there and you already know, okay, step 1 is this, step 2 is that, you'll feel calmer and more in control, and you'll be able to do a better job. And so with that comes know what to expect, but then roll with the punches, because there's always something that happens that you're like, oh, shoot, I didn't expect for that to happen. And if you know that, then you'll be able to handle it. So don't go in there thinking like, oh, I know absolutely everything. Like, no, you have to realize that, who knows, the power could go out, or things happen, and you just need to be able to find your center and breathe and keep going no matter what. So finally, I'll end, and this is another general exam tip. It goes for any exam you ever take. There is always a margin for error. So on the written exam, it's a 75 you have to get on the written exam, right? Not an
75 on the written in Spanish and English.
Right. So you have to get 75 in both languages or above. Right. So that's a 25% margin for error. Now, I'm not saying that because you should just plan on making all these mistakes. You'll make them without planning on it. But that means that if you encounter a section of the exam that's difficult, you don't have to lose your cool over it. You can say, okay, that's part of my margin for error. I'm going to put all the answers in anyway, just because I might get it right just by chance. And you're going to keep going. Okay? Any questions on the general exam tips? Okay, so I have some information about the written exam. I finally have this as a concrete answer, and that's thanks to Gabriela Munoz, who is here. Thank you, Gabriela. So how long does the test last? for a long time, I've been telling my students between 2 and 3/4 hours and 3 1/4 hours because I had differing information and I could not get a straight answer. But Gabriella got it for me. So the test should take 2 hours and 45 minutes. Somebody's not muted. Actually, I'm not sure who it is. Check yourselves and make sure you're muted, please.
I'll take care of it.
Cool, thanks. Okay, so 2 3/4 hours is how long the test takes. There are 80 questions in Spanish, 80 questions in English. And the types of questions, and this is important because it's evenly divided throughout: reading comprehension, usage, error detection, synonyms, best translation. If you don't know what any of those things are, now's the time to find out. Make sure you know what to expect for usage, what to expect for error detection, for all of these things, what kind of questions can come up, because the clock is ticking. The next exam is going to be next month. So if you don't know what these things are, now is the time. And I'll show you in a moment, there's some mock exams out there that you can use to sort of see where are my weaknesses and my strengths. Because when I was taking this, I realized there were big gaps in my English that I didn't know about. I always assumed that like in Spanish, there's going to be problems, but I didn't realize that in English too. I was like, oh, I don't know this rule. So you want to use your mock exams as a way to diagnose and then to learn from. Any question you get wrong, you use it. Now, I wanted to clarify. Oh, okay, I made a mistake. All right, thank you. I will blame myself for that one. So it's supposed to be 2.5 for the first version. Okay, I'm confused now. I thought that it was 2 3/4, but I will. Okay, I trust Gabriella. I'm gonna I don't like that we're all looking at it now and it's wrong. Okay, pretend you're not looking at it and pretend like it says the other thing. So 2.5 hours. So the clarification was that there is a pilot version sometimes. The pilot version is longer. It has 100 questions in each language, and it's 3 1/4 hours. Did I get that right? Let's see. Bingo. Okay, wonderful. Oh, they've updated the time. Why do they keep changing things on me? All right, well then at least I don't have to feel like a crazy person. So if you get the pilot version, and I don't know if there'll be one this year, then it'll take longer and some of those questions won't count. But bully for you, you don't know which ones count and which ones don't, and don't waste your time guessing. That's a waste of your time. So just, treat it like it's a 200 question test and do your best. All right. So I wanted to put a special point here for the reading comprehension because that's really the crazy part. I think a lot of people struggle with the reading comprehension. And there, in my opinion, there is no way to speed through the reading comprehension section. I know some people who will save it to last because they know that it takes a long time. And so they'll do everything else first. And that way, if they run out of time during reading comprehension, then at least they've got everything done already. That's a possibility. Just remember, if you start jumping around in the test, you have to keep track of what you've answered and what you haven't. You don't want to accidentally skip a section. So be very careful if you do that. But my advice to you is to practice not reading quickly, but reading thoroughly. It's going to be hopeless unless you really, really try to understand what the text is saying. And my favorite thing is to look at each paragraph and say, okay, can you explain what this paragraph is about to a 5-year-old child? If you can explain that paragraph to a 5-year-old child, you've understood it, you've analyzed it, you've processed it, and you can write a little summary. And then when you get to the end, you'll be surprised. You'll probably have answered most of the questions already. Because the written exam, a lot of people are like, oh, it's full of traps. They're trying to trick us. It's not about traps and tricks. It's about being thorough, being careful, being meticulous. So sometimes there might be a double negative. Sometimes there may be something that's referring, you'll see what trips you up and you want to ask yourself, what was I not careful about that time? Because it's not about second guessing yourself and trying to think about, oh, could it be B? Is it C? Are they trying to trick me? No, read it thoroughly and then go with what your knowledge tells you and otherwise do your best guess. So for reading comprehension, I recommend you read carefully, you build an understanding of what the whole piece is about, and that you're able to explain the main idea of each paragraph to a 5-year-old child. And when you answer the question, find specifically where you can back yourself up in the text. And sometimes people will see, oh, well, they said 30,000 in the text and now they've said 30,000 in the answer. And so I'm going to click 30,000 and they're not even looking at what that number represents. So don't fall for answers that are true or that use similar language, but that aren't related to the actual question that needs to be answered. And that can only be done not by second guessing, but by being really thorough. There's some chats going on, so I want to see what's being said. So we have a question about the passing rate for the written exam, which I also don't know. I think altogether it's like a 4% that make it through. And then I think it's once you've passed the written, it goes up to like 20% for passing the oral.
I think the oral is 4%.
The oral is 4% and then the
Yeah.
written is 20. I don't know. I
That
don't
would
know.
make sense.
Yeah. If anybody knows, feel free to say. Tony says there are always two legal documents that are hard to synthesize. Thank you. My recommendation is to start just like download a bunch of like go online and look for legal gibberish in both languages. Print off the legal gibberish and practice deciphering it. Practice reading because you'll learn. It's actually not gibberish. It's just a very different way of speaking. So if you can learn to sort of cut through all of that dense gibberish, you'll get to the idea at the bottom. You just have to look for it. But that takes time and practice. So I recommend that you print those things off now, like Google. I used to go, when I was studying for both parts of the exam, I think I had criminal codes from different countries, especially in Spanish. And I would just try to decipher what it was talking about. You start to get used to it. You start to understand that kind of language. Okay, so yeah, people are talking about what the passing rate is. There's a thing about Poder Judicial publishing legal documents. Okay, that's helpful. So anyone who has put recommendations in the chat, I'm going to actually put right now, I'm going to put my email address in athena.skyinterpreting@gmail.com. Feel free to email me these resources either now or later, and then I'll compile them all into an email. A good tip is to try to find legal documents from different Spanish-speaking countries to catch the nuances. Absolutely. For the gibberish, come to my job at the State Bar of California. I deal with that every single day. All right, so we'll all go hang out with Fabian. And then Gonzalo says you can find each country's criminal code online. Awesome. Okay, so in terms of the written exam, my tips. First, don't overestimate your language abilities, even your native language. This test is hard. Seriously, I can't say that again. Like a lot of people just go in and they're like, oh, I speak Spanish, I speak English, I'll take this test. Test's hard. Got to study for it. No way around it. I suggest taking a baseline mock exam. Time is now if you're hoping to get this done for next month. Hopefully you've been studying for a little while already. But pedal to the metal. If not, take your baseline mock exam now. And it's good for a couple reasons. It's good to get an idea of where you are. Like Gonzalo, it's interesting you said you've never met anyone who got a passing grade on the mock exam from the University of Arizona. I never passed that either, so now I feel better because I literally went into the exam like, well, I guess I'm not going to pass because I never got the passing grade. So what you do is though, you can use it to sort of estimate where you are, and if you get close to passing, that's exciting. But then the other thing you can do is use every single wrong answer or every single answer you got right but you weren't sure about as a chance to refine your knowledge. So you want to ask yourself, you take the test and then you see, okay, I got this question wrong. And then you say, what is this question about? Is it subjunctive? Is it prepositions? Is it possessive? Is it reading comprehension? What kind of question is it? And once you've identified what the weak spot is, then you can go specifically to other things like SAT and GRE books, for example, that deal with subjunctive, prepositions, possessive, reading comprehension. And so then you work on those weak spots and then you come back and take another mock exam. I would recommend, I always say like you're going for being thorough and methodical rather than rushing, right? You really don't want to feel like you're rushed. However, there is a time limit on this. So as the exam gets closer, I would say a couple weeks before the exam, maybe, or possibly around now, depending on where you are in your whole study process, I mean, literally, if you're studying now and the test is next month, I would say that's okay, but go in with the attitude of, I'm going to learn what this test is about. Hopefully I pass it, but at least if I don't, I'll have an understanding of it, because a month isn't that much time. So hopefully you have been studying for a while, and if you haven't, I don't want to discourage you from taking it. I just want you to understand that this is a difficult thing to do, and so you shouldn't feel bad if you don't get the desired result. But I would suggest that pretty soon you do a mock exam where you time yourself and finish the whole thing, even if you go over time, just because it's a good practice. But then you can see, okay, which sections take longer? What do I want to do about reading comprehension? Because essentially, the other sections can take a lot less time. If you were to, I can't remember, I did the math at one point. If you were to divide, if somebody wants to do the math, feel free to put it in the chat. If you were to divide all the time by the number of questions, how much time you have. But you can take a lot shorter on things like error detection and usage, and that will buy you time for reading comprehension, which can't be rushed. And you can play toward your weaknesses. So that means you can move around different sections. Just be careful about if you do that, what happens. Always put an answer down. This is for any multiple choice exam that you ever take. Always, always, always answer it, because you don't want the clock to run out and for there to be blank questions. Because anytime, even if you have no idea what the answer is, there's a 25% chance that you will get that question right. And if you were able to use process elimination to get rid of a couple of answers, then your chances go even higher. So always put an answer down. And what I would suggest is not spending too much time on any one question. And so what that means is, if you're not sure, but you can feel the clock ticking and you want to move on to the next one, answer it with whatever like your best guess, and make a note to yourself that you weren't sure of that question, so that if you do get all the way to the end and you still have time, you can go back and see if you can figure out what the answer is. All right, I'm seeing more things in the chat.
I have tried to address most of the questions that have popped up in the chat.
Awesome. You're a wonderful volunteer co-host. Thank you so much.
I try.
So, all right. So you answered the question about the mock exam. All right, cool. So do you just tell me if there's something that I should address? Otherwise, I leave it in your capable hands. Okay, so that was my tips for the written exam. Resources, that was the next thing I wanted to share with you. So first of all, you have the website where the test will is being administered. So they have a practice mock exam there. So that actually, to the question that was in the chat, that's a free one that you can get off the internet. So that's wonderful. There's also the examinee handbook. I suggest reading it cover to cover, just because it'll make you feel more powerful and more in control the day of the exam. You'll know what to expect. And like silly things like, one of the things I didn't mention for testing tips was, dress in layers, because maybe the air conditioning will be freezing or something like that, right? But sometimes they even say things like that in the examinee handbook. So read it. It's worth your while. It'll be a bit boring, but knowledge is power. Now, I put University of Arizona, but Gonzalo, you said like the Arizona Institute of something else. Am I right, or are you right?
No, it's the same thing. I just never remember the full name, so I just say Arizona, and most
Okay.
people in the interpreting realm pretty much know what I'm talking about.
Because I know I was messing up at one point. I was calling it Arizona University, and then I got corrected. No, it's the University of Arizona. So now I'm like, oh, wait, did I mess it up again? But in any case, they offer at least 2 mock exams, and you have to buy them, but I think it's worth your money. You'll take it, you won't pass, but don't worry, neither did Gonzalo or me or anyone else we know. So take it, use it as your baseline, and use it to identify your weaknesses and strengths. There's also SAT and GRE prep books and other things of that nature. And of course, there's networking with your colleagues.
Athena, if I may, since we're
Sure.
talking about this, in terms of mock exams, the only ones that I know of are the ones you mentioned, the one that it's on the actual test site. Also, there's this one in a federal interpreter based out of Mexico City, Judy Jenner or something. She has her own company and she has a mock exam, and also Trans Interpreting has its own exams. And if I may just point out one thing, I don't want to interrupt you.
No, it's fine.
Okay, so the point of this exam, in my opinion, is to test whether we have an understanding of each language at the college level, I think. So for instance, for Spanish, something that I found, since I'm from Chile, we have a test called the PSU, which is basically the equivalent to the SAT. So online, I was actually able to find the different versions from different years, and there are tests for chemistry, math, etc., which we don't care about. But there's also a literature Castellano section, which is what I use to prepare for this, and it will be included in the email for those of you that want to strengthen your Spanish. So that's what I wanted to say for some people that are probably freaking out over finding Spanish college level materials.
That's awesome. I wish that I had known these things when I was studying for the exam. And I'm glad to know that there are other mock exams out there because I actually didn't know. So I'm going to keep a list of these things. And since you mentioned the point of the exam, I actually think that it bears mentioning. This is to be a federal court interpreter. We all know that. But it's not exactly a test of legalese, and it is to a certain extent. There will be legal terminology, and it behooves you to have an understanding of how courts work and of basic courtroom terminology and federal court terminology, but it's not a terminology test. So it's more like they want you to have very high proficiency in both languages and to be able to decipher legalese if you need to. So I would bear that in mind. A lot of people go into these exams, both the written and the oral, thinking, okay, I have to memorize all the court terminology. And it's not so much that as it is really having an excellent skill in both languages. All right, so I'm going to wrap this up in a moment and open the floor to all of you. I'm going to pass this stuff for the oral exam because that's for the oral exam. I wanted to tell you about this, and in a moment I'm going to put a link in the chat room. So for those of you, I know that the focus is the written here, but you're all going to go take it next month, and then you're going to pass it, and then you're going to be studying for the oral exam. And I am really, really excited. I just spent 2 hours today with Virginia Valencia from Interpretrain. We are going to be, and this was just christened today, we're going to be holding a federal oral exam masterclass. So that will be for those of you who want to study for the oral exam next June. We have scheduled, and we spent 2 hours today going day by day, what are we going to be doing every single day, March through early June 2020. She and I are going to be leading it. There'll be some classes where it's the two of us, and otherwise we'll be alternating who is going to be facilitating the classes. She is an amazing instructor. She's very proficient in consecutive. She has an incredible background. And if you're interested in this, then you can see at the bottom of the slide, we're going to be having an info session on October 20th, but you'll get a chance to meet her then. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about it. I hope you don't mind, but I think that it will be of benefit to many of you. We're going to be holding during the course of this 3-month, you can look at it sort of like a college course for the federal oral exam. We're going to have 2 week-long intensives, one at the beginning and one at the end. You will be meeting weekly in study pods. So it's 68 hours in the classroom. It's 24 hours of group study with your pods. We will be using the Interpretrain Federal Study Package as our material. So we'll be working our way through that course, and you will, by the end, you'll have terminology coming out your ears because she really drills vocabulary. They created the study package and I helped them out with it. I really like it. And she'll also be doing the symbols and note-taking techniques package. So it will be a very, very thorough overview. There will be homework and classwork, and that will be using the federal study package. And we're also going to include portions on study self-care and mental wellness for test taking because it's really, really important. I had one of my classmates this year in our master's program had a panic attack in the middle of the exam, and I don't think that that's uncommon. These exams are really scary, and we put so much pressure on ourselves, and so part of preparing for the exam is really preparing for your own mental health. So we're going to be addressing that in our class. Also, it's going to be bilingual. I'm really excited about this. It'll probably be mostly in Spanish because most of us spend too much time speaking in English and not enough time speaking in Spanish, myself included. So get ready for a bunch of Spanish. The info session is going to be October 20th at 8:30. So it's just to talk about this in particular. So if you are interested in attending that, in just a second, I'm going to find the link and you can just sign up for that. Hang on, now I've lost, there we go. Okay, so here's the link for the oral exam masterclass. And other than that, I just wanted to share some other things that I'm up to, but I'll be really quick about this because I didn't want to make it an infomercial for my stuff. But just feel free to visit my website. There's actually a bunch of resources that are all for free on the federal exams. There's also blogs that I write that sort of guide you through different aspects of test taking and that kind of thing. And I do offer private and small group coaching and monthly webinars. So I had mentioned my mailing list earlier. I'm going to put that sign up form in the chat now. So this is for the mailing list. Oh, did I put 2020? Somebody's saying something about 2020. I don't know. I'm gonna have to look at that in a second. But anyway, the MailChimp thing is for signing up for the masterclass, and the mailing list, I just put that now. And most of you probably already know, but I have a webinar series that I'm offering. This Sunday, we're going to be doing a simultaneous one. And then in November, I have one on memory, and in December on note-taking. So I have those links as well. I'll put them in the chat, and I'll put them in the follow-up email. And I wanted to offer you all a discount if you do want to sign up for the webinars. You can put coffee 10 without the exclamation point. I'll get rid of that just so it doesn't confuse you. Coffee 10, that'll give you $10 off. And the final thing that I wanted to leave you with before I open the floor to all of you is different Facebook groups. So I really encourage you to join Future Fedes as you're studying for the federal exam. I also have my own company Facebook group is Athena Sky Interpreting. If you're into French, I have the French Interpreting Corner. I also have one interpreter's certification or bust, which is kind of like Future Fedes. Maybe I can merge them somehow. I don't know. But the interpreter certification or bust one is more general because it's other certifications as well. And also Tony Valle is here. His resource center for certified interpreters is right there on the list as well. He's got 2,000 people in that group, and they're an amazing community to share with. So that's all for what I had to say. I wanted to open the floor up to all of you to see what you have to say. Does anyone have questions or comments or things that they wanted to share for this coffee hour? Now's the time. Floor is yours.
Don't all jump at once.
Anyone? Questions, comments, concerns, things you
Athena,
know?
what we were saying about the 2020 was that you said that is taking place from March to June 2020, which
Exactly.
we hope
I thought that's what you must have meant. All right, I lied. It is 2021. I promise we'd never have to see 2020 again. Thank you. Yep. Okay, what was there anything else in the chat? So we had, okay, so we have Judy's company. We have some exam stuff. Thank you for correcting me on the year. It's every single year. It like takes me a month to adjust to the new year. So clearly I'm just thinking that it is. There's some stuff about living near San Antonio, Texas. There's some stuff for you there. And then I put the links to my upcoming webinars. And I think that's about it. Okay, can you recommend any resources for idioms?
So, Athena,
Yeah.
in that sense, I bought a few books which are a bit dated, but they have a bunch of expressions that they come with exercises. The books were made in the 80s, and you can find them in Amazon. There are 3, and they will be included in the email. One thing though, in terms of idioms, expressions, etc., something that a lot of instructors will say in that regard is that oftentimes idioms or expressions are things that you either don't know or you don't know, and it's not something you can really or you can't really study that much off of a book. It's something that you will mostly learn through either experience or watching a native speaking show on television, I think.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I mean, I have tried. I think even if you go to Quizlet, Quizlet is a great resource, by the way, Quizlet.com. You'll probably be able to find me, like I have a bunch of glossaries on Quizlet, and I've tried to study idioms that way, where you just like memorize them. But I think Gonzalo is right. It's really about learning it in context. And what is important on an exam like this is if you know the meaning, you don't have to know the exact equivalent in the other language. If you know the meaning, like on the oral exam, if you hear it's raining cats and dogs, and you can't immediately think how to say that in Spanish, but you say something along the lines of it's raining really hard, you will actually get the point. It's okay if you don't have a corresponding idiom as long as you get the meaning right. I see that Danielle Science has his hand up.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, for registration on the federal exams, like how hard of a process is it? Is it just going on the website and registering, or is it like, um, is there like a special process? Are you supposed to be in contact with any particular agency or anything like that?
So the Prometric, it's Prometric, and I had the link in my PowerPoint, which I can share with you guys in my follow-up email, but I'll put that link here now. And so, yeah, it's just a matter of paying and signing up. I know that sometimes the systems fail, and so it's better to do it sooner rather than later. Like, you know, don't wait to the last minute. But yeah, it's just a matter of paying and registering. Okay, and somebody says you have to create an account. I saw also in the chat a little bit back, there was a question on, I'd like to share some thoughts on the federal exam and prepping for it with Taiwanese friends here in Taiwan and the US. What's up with non-Spanish federal certification these days? I'm sorry to tell you that it's non-existent. They used to do Haitian Creole and Navajo, and I'm not entirely sure how those three languages were the ones that got a federal certification, but I don't believe that they offer the test anymore, even for those two languages. So this really is a Spanish-English exam. There are other certifications out there for other languages, but the federal one, unfortunately, I think it's just because of the overwhelming population that speaks Spanish and needs interpreters in federal court. So usually if you want to interpret in federal court and you speak another language, then you get on their roster probably by being state certified, but there may be other qualifications they would take into account. Other questions?
Well, I just want to say something, Athena, if I may.
Sure.
Well, I think the news is very exciting about this workshop that you put together with Virginia Valencia. I think that's probably like the most exciting news that we're going to hear all day. So thank you so much for organizing that. And God willing, we will pass this first hurdle of passing the written exam, and then we'll start preparing right away for the oral, and then get ourselves ready to actually to be, you know, to be part of that class that you'll be doing in Virginia. So thank you so much for that news.
Thanks, Tony. I'm rooting for all of you to pass the written exam and join us. I'm really excited about this. We're spending a lot of time together online on Zoom, planning things, and I think it's going to be really cool.
I've seen the materials that she has for the oral exam preparation. They're outstanding materials. So with that added element now of some additional teaching and coaching and guidance from you, the ability to get those pods, and just the approach, and the fact that you'll be doing this in the last quarter, if you will, leading up to the exam, I think is just, it's all a recipe for success. So thank you again for that.
Thank you, Tony. I appreciate that. And I'm putting my mailing list here now. I know a few of you have said into the chat, how do we get on the mailing list? Because not all of you are on. If you already signed up for this or you already received an email from me, it means you're on the mailing list. But if you came in through Facebook or someone forwarded you the link, then you can just fill out the form that I've put into the chat, and I'll put you on my list. Awesome. I see that we're getting more people now. I have a feeling that, what is the estimated cost? So I don't want to, it's going to be a chunk, that I can tell you, because it's a 3-month intensive program. We haven't finalized the pricing, but by October 20th, our info session is October 20th at 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. That's going to be the info session. We will have all of those things nailed down. We're going to have an early bird pricing, and we're also going to have a payment plan schedule if you need to spread it out. So we'll have that for you, but I just don't want to say the price right now because I don't know 100% for sure what it's going to be. All right. Man, we're up to 71 people. I'm really, thank you for spending your Tuesday night with me. And I hope that this is helpful, the stuff that has been shared. I wasn't originally planning on talking so much, and then I made my PowerPoint and there you went. Could you please specify time commitment needed for your class in March? So the time commitment is going to be intense. The idea is we're meeting, you have to plan on spending 4 nights a week. It's going to be Mondays and Thursday nights is when we're going to meet in class. And then we recommend you do homework on Tuesday, although you could do it a different time if you wanted. And then Wednesday we recommend being the day that you meet with your pods. So The pod day and the homework day is kind of like negotiable, but the Monday and the Thursday is not. And in order to be able to fully participate in the course, you have to be doing your homework and meeting with your pod. And that's part of the point. It's hopefully a way of getting people motivated and holding them accountable, because that can be really challenging when you're studying for something like this. And so it really will be like you're taking a college course on the oral exam. Okay, I'm seeing lots of people coming in. Welcome, welcome everybody. We're going to transition now into the oral exam component. You're all welcome to stay if you're here for the written exam, because hopefully by next month you will need advice on the oral exam because you'll pass the written. So, but I won't be offended if you decide to head out now. That's fine. I'm watching the participant list growing. Okay, we really are getting a bunch more, and I don't think we're losing people. So some of you who were here for the first hour, it may be a bit redundant because I will go over some of the stuff again. I think I might not do I'll do an abbreviated version because I don't want to repeat myself. I think if I did this coffee hour again, I might just say everyone get here at the same time, and then we have like the beginning and the end be the same and just go over both. But it's the first time I did a coffee hour, so I'm sorry if it ends up getting a bit redundant. And all right, so I think we can go back now to the beginning and start again. So we'll transition into the oral exam. Let me see, what did I have at the beginning so that I don't have to just repeat myself? So welcome, first of all, to those of you who are just getting here now. It's wonderful to have you with us. And we've just been talking for the last hour about a bunch of things. And some of them are relevant to you, so I do want to repeat some of what I've said, but I'm going to try to keep it brief. I'm going to skip past the housekeeping. I'll skip past the get to know you part. I think what I'll do is I'm going to just tell you a little bit about myself to anybody who doesn't know that. It's fine. I'm Athena. Passed the oral exam. It was hard work. I'm like, I don't want to repeat myself. You guys know who I am, right? Kind of, sort of. I'm hosting this. You're here. I have stuff to share with you. I'm seeing some people shaking their heads. All right, I really should have done this just getting everyone together all the time. I see a question in the chat. What time zone is Athena for the weekdays since Virginia's in California? So it's going to be, I can't remember what we said the classes are going to be. I don't remember. We'll tell you at the info session because I don't remember off the top of my head, but it's going to be later in the night for East Coast, like 8-ish, and then later afternoon for West Coast, like 5-ish. But we want to give people a chance to get home from work. So it's hard to juggle with East and West Coast schedules, but I think we settled on something like around 8 o'clock Eastern. Okay, so for those of you who just came in, they're asking about an oral exam masterclass that Virginia Valencia and I will be offering in the spring. So I'll tell you about that in a second. So just to introduce myself a little bit, I'm an interpreter and a trainer. I'm trained for medical, court, and conference interpreting. I just finished my master's degree this year, which is really exciting. And I wanted to have you all here to share resources and tips on the exams. So we've just shared on the written exam, and I have my helpful co-host here, Gonzalo. He was one of my students last year, and he just passed, last year he passed the oral exam. So he is now federally certified, which is awesome. And so he's here also with a bunch of resources and to help out. So actually, why don't I get you guys involved? Those of you who were just here in the last hour for the written portion, what were some of those general tips that we talked about? So I'm just repeating myself. Was there any takeaway you had when I talked about like test taking tips that stood out for you? You can feel free to put them in the chat. Always give an answer. Exactly. So for the written exam, always give an answer. And that's going to go with any multiple choice thing. So I think the equivalent for the oral exam would be keep going no matter what. Don't stop. You know, you make a mistake, keep going. What else from the read the exam handbook? That's another one that I would recommend anytime you're taking an exam, is know what you're getting yourself into. No dead air, exactly. Know the exam and do mock exams, and that applies to both the written and the oral. no new study materials right before this. Oh, I love it when people are listening. So yeah, for the, and as I told you guys earlier, Gonzalo ignored me on that because he just kept studying until I believe he probably pulled an all-nighter the night before. No, you at least slept, right? You at least slept the night before the exam?
If you're talking about the oral, I actually ran out of juice in Thanksgiving, and that's basically when I stopped studying. I did some vocab studying, but basically I didn't interpret until the day before just to kind of get going.
Good. And actually, that is something that I didn't mention earlier, but it's perfect for the oral exam, is that doing a warm up of something that you already know, that you're already familiar with, that is a good idea because it gets your juices flowing, it gets your, you know, your brain working, but it's not going to psych you out because with the oral exam, you're gonna, it's just, you don't want to do something super insanely hard and then right before you take the test and then get all discouraged. So it really, like, this piece about morale is important. Okay, cool. So I'm gonna share my screen and show you the rest of that general tips thing. And I'll have Gonzalo keep an eye on the chat. So my general exam tips are these. So we already talked about stop introducing new material a week or so before the test, stop studying a few days before the test, take care of your physical health, know how to get to the exam, plan for traffic. Like these are all just like general exam tips and they're going to be good for the oral exam and for the written exam. Know what to expect, but then roll with the punches. So, you know, you go in with as much information as you can, but just be ready for something not to be going as planned and not to get thrown off by that. And this was true for the written. It's also true for the oral. There's always a margin for error. One mistake won't ruin it for you. So I meet people a lot who are like, oh, I was doing great. And then I forgot how to say this one word. And I know that's what ruined it for me. One word literally can't ruin an exam for you. The written exam is a 75% you have to get in both languages. For the oral exam is 80%. It's still 20% margin for error. So again, I'm not encouraging you to make mistakes. You'll do that without my encouragement because all of us do. But it means that if you do make a mistake, it's not the end of the universe. The only thing that's actually the end of the universe is if you get so upset that you've made that mistake that you quit. Your brain just shuts off and you shut down. So part of that, and like this is why when Virginia and I do our course, we're going to be focusing a bit on wellness, is like you have to learn how to manage that stress and to manage, you know, you will be nervous, you will be anxious, and you will be worried about making mistakes. I say plan to make a mistake. You will make a mistake. You will make several mistakes. You will forget words that you thought that you knew, that you practiced a million times. There will be terms that you studied yesterday that you've forgotten. There will be terms like elbow or, I don't know, earthquake that are like words that you should know how to say and you've forgotten them. And that's okay because it's what happens when we're under stress and under pressure, and that's why we have a 20% margin for error. So just the important thing is that you take a deep breath, you tell yourself, Athena told me to expect this, and now it's happened, and then you keep going. All right, so those are my general exam tips. And then I had this section on the written, which we'll skip past. And now we get to the oral exam. So as I said, knowledge is power. You want to know what you're in for with the oral exam. Site translation is one of the sections. These are all the things that you should know. The length of the documents, about 230 words. How much time you're given for the translation in total, 5 minutes. And the maximum time permitted for review, 1.5 minutes. The question that's not here is, should you use that review time? And the answer is yes. And the question is, how can you use your review time effectively? And the answer is read to understand the document. This is the only portion of any exam or any mode of interpreting where we are actually able to see the topic in advance. We can find out about it in advance. And it's not about doing a translation in your head in that minute and a half. The translation will come later, and the translation will be better if you have understood the text. If you've understood it and maybe done a bit of troubleshooting, so you see where complicated syntax might throw you off, if you understand the ideas and how they relate to each other, you use that minute and a half to do a very thorough reading. And then you do your 3.5 minute rendition, and you don't have to rush through it. It's not about rushing, it's about having good pacing. So people with site translation, they'll often think that they have to rush because they don't have a lot of time. You can actually speak quite slowly and still get through the time just fine. It's more about not stopping and not backtracking. You'll lose time if you didn't read properly and then you realize you don't know what it's about and you start your sentence and you have to restart your sentence or restart it again. So if you do a really good job reading it thoroughly beforehand and using those reading comprehension skills you got for the written exam, that will allow you to have a good sight translation with good pacing. Now, I took the term scoreable units. I usually use scoring units, but this is what they had in the website back in the day. And so I was like, all right, I'll use their terminology. If you're not familiar with how the exam is graded, basically they'll hand you this text. And in that text, 22 terms or phrases will be underlined. Those are specific on the grader's copy. You won't see the underlines, unfortunately. So you won't know which ones are the scoring units. Don't waste your time trying to guess. Just do a good job. But the graders are going to be looking for those 22 pieces, and they want to hear you say a good equivalent. And there's usually multiple ways to say the same thing, but you need to say one of those things correctly. And so for each one you get right, you get one of those scoring units. So the most you could get would be 22. In terms of the types of documents, you're going to have for English into Spanish, there'll be police reports, pre-sentence investigation reports, and affidavits. And then from Spanish into English, you'll have notarized affidavits, legal documents, educated letters, things like that. So familiarize yourself with these kinds of things. When I was studying for the oral exam, I used to carry around like a file full of wills and police reports and just any kind of document that I thought might have a chance of appearing on the exam. And I spent my time sight translating, but I also just spent my time practicing decoding. It's actually really more important that you're capable of understanding the message, because once you understand it, you'll find the words in the other language. So it's not about necessarily translating it, it's about deciphering it, decoding it, understanding it. And hopefully the work that you're doing on the written exam will pay off then for the sight. The chat is blowing up and I just want to make sure that I address things there. And Tony, go ahead while I look at the chat.
Yeah, Athena, thank you so much. I'm actually quite shocked here to see that there's some suggestion that there's no notes allowed when you're doing the sight portion of the oral exam, because obviously for the state exam, you're given a blank sheet of paper and a pen, and you can, take notes on the, on the side if you can't mark up the original document. But I use that quite a bit. There's a whole strategy I came up with actually to make notes for the document. So I just want to confirm, you can't use notes?
No, you can use notes. From what I know, you either can use notes or they may give you like an iPad sort of thing, like a digital thing that you write on, but you are allowed to take notes when you're interpreting for the oral exam, and you're also given some sort of scratch paper for the written, unless somebody has something to the contrary. I'm looking through the chat now to see that. Feel free to say in the chat if you have a different experience, but from what I understand, you are able to take notes.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Tony.
Yeah, no, just that. I mean, I'm just curious. So do they give you a blank sheet of, like, it's again, Prometric administers the state exam here in California. So they gave us a blank sheet of copy paper and a pen, and then you can write notes on the side. And then that would help me kind of make sense of the document, if you will.
Right. Yeah. Because they're not going to let you mark up the document itself,
Right.
but they should allow you to have scratch paper.
Right.
And that's something that I would push for if you show up and the proctor tells you no. And that's one of the things where it's like, know what to expect, but roll with the punches. So if they end up telling you you're not allowed to have it, then you deal, right? But they should give it to you. I don't know. I can't promise, but that's my understanding. I also saw there was a question in the chat about what my Facebook page was. I have a few. I'll put them in the follow-up email because I think things will get lost in the chat right now. Yes, but I'll put them in the follow-up email. So one thing, just if I'm not on your radar and I don't have your email address, scroll up in the chat to get to that the sign up for my mailing list, and I can put it in there again, because once you've done that, then you'll get a follow-up email and it'll have this information. There's a question in the site translation. It is best to skim the site document or read it thoroughly before start interpreting since the time is so limited. So yeah, read it. You won't regret it. The more you understand it beforehand, the better you'll do. And like I said, you can speak really slowly and still get that 3.5 minutes. If you've properly understood it, then you'll have good pacing. But if you don't read it, and if you just skim really quickly and really don't do that methodical reading, it's more likely that you'll have a worse time with the timing because you'll have backtracking and you'll have long pauses while you're trying to figure out. The point is that at the end of the day, you're going to have to understand the document, and it's better to use your time wisely and understand it first, and then go and do a really solid, fluid interpretation. And Gonzalo recommends using a timer, which is totally true. Elizabeth has a question about taking notes, and that's what we all just talked about. Yeah, so I really think that you should be able to. Anything else in the chat that I'm missing? If there's anything that I need to address particularly, let me know, because I can see a lot of stuff happening, but I'm going to keep going with my PowerPoint, and I'm going to rely on my trusty people in the room to just tell me if there's something that I should address.
So Athena, if I may, since we're talking about site,
Yeah.
Enrique is asking to find documents, where to find documents to practice on. And actually, typically, if you go to a country's judiciary page, you will find lots of stuff. If you go to attorney office websites in different countries, you can find stuff. In my study group, we were fortunate enough that actually two of our members are actual attorneys, one in Chile and one here in the US. So they were able to get us or find us sources with those documents. And then somebody asked another question. Since we were talking about the site, in terms of when you prepare, something that I found useful, and I wrote it here, but I don't know if everyone saw it. I actually wrote out translations for each document that I would site translate. So before I would even do renditions, I would write out a translation. And that was super helpful to me because it seemed to make a difference other than just doing renditions. Because oftentimes when you see stuff in Spanish legalese, it's very hard to find the subject. So this made things clear for me.
Awesome. Yeah. And that was in practice, obviously, because on the day of the exam, you're going to have to just go for it. So I would say if you do
Correct.
that, make sure you also practice with blind runs so that you know what it's like when you haven't done the translation beforehand. But that'll really help to get the terminology in your memory.
So I would do the translation, and then I would do the rendition over and over. And typically the last go, if you will, that's the one that I would time to kind of condition myself.
Awesome. Cool. Listen to him. He did good. Tony, go ahead.
Thank you so much. So I just noticed a comment by Yadira, and I think this is critically important. She said, some proctors won't give you a warning in time, so I actually started site translating before the warning. Well, certainly my game plan, I go in, I let the proctor know, please, I'm going to insist that you give me 1.5 minutes to review and then tell me once those 1.5 minutes have expired, and then let me know so that I can begin my rendition, right? This idea that some proctors will give you a warning and some won't, take control of that, because I want to be focused for that 1.5 minutes on reading, understanding, like you said, get my mind together to deliver that rendition once my time to rendition comes up. But this idea that there's going to be some people get the warning, some people don't, forget about it, insist on it, that's my feeling.
Yeah, advocate for yourself. I really like that you're saying that. And that's part of, know everything you know beforehand. So unmuted. Okay, now I'm not muted.
I clicked that by accident. I'm so sorry.
No worries. I was like, the host has muted you. It's okay. All right, so where was I? Yes, advocate for yourself. Know what to ask for. And that's a perfectly reasonable thing to ask for, is please, please, please tell me when the 1.5 minutes is up. And, get that confirmation from them that they will, and then you do it. And, so it's the whole thing. Know what to expect, roll with the punches.
Athena, if I may add, again, just a little thing. In my case, when I was doing, I think, my Spanish site in the actual exam, the lady said, okay, you're gonna have 2 minutes to look it over and then 3 minutes to do the translation. And because I conditioned myself, I kind of knew when the 2 minutes would be up. So she actually told me to start interpreting after 1 minute of reviewing it. So then I had about 2 seconds to make a decision of whether I would argue with her or just get on with it and then make a point. So I remember when I finished, I said to her, listen, you told me I would have 2 minutes. You actually gave me 1. I just want to make sure that's on the record in case anything happens. So just like you said, be prepared for that eventuality. I hope that didn't happen to anybody else. It happened to me. So I just thought I'd point that out.
Yeah, thank you. All right, so to continue, so we have the site translation section, and that was 22 scoring units in each language. So you could do one from English to Spanish, one to Spanish to English. So simultaneous, always going to be from English into Spanish. There's 2 sections to simultaneous, and to be perfectly honest, the federal oral exam is not that much different from the state oral exam. So if you are already state certified, it's actually a pretty similar test. The difference is going to come at the end when I throw the last piece of the simultaneous at you. So the site translation is more high register than you would see on the state exam. That's where it differs. Other than that, it's pretty similar, but the register gets bumped up. This simultaneous, I would say, is pretty similar to what you would see on the state exam. It's 7 minutes long, about, and 120 words per minute. And that's what you would see on a state certification test, 120 words per minute. There's 65 scoring units. And the type of language it usually has is a typical jury address containing high and low registers. So you have to be ready for an attorney to be speaking in a really high register, you know, heretofores and wherefroms, which PS, I have a really good formulaic glossary on my website resource section. You might have to dig a bit. I'm an interpreter, not a website designer, and my website is maybe not the best, but go to the resources section, you will find this formulaic glossary, and it's got all the wheretofore, who's a what's it. It's really good. So, and that's free to download. So you'll have that high register language, and then you'll have low register, like, and then he drove past me in his car and he lowered the window and he shouted, "You fucking asshole." And you're gonna have to be able to interpret that into Spanish. So be prepared for both. Be prepared for the high register legalese, be prepared for the low register profanity and slang, which honestly I had to study for because I learned Spanish in university. Everyone was very proper. I went to Honduras. Everyone was very proper. I came back and started studying for these tests, and I was like, I literally don't know how to say these things. And so I made myself a glossary of all the swear words. And that's how I did that. Consecutive. As you can see, this has quite a few scoring units, 76. The section will last 18 minutes at the most. I actually ran out of time in this section. I didn't think that I was going too slowly because, you know, there's always a couple seconds that you have to pause to finish your notes before you keep going. And I actually, like, she stopped. She was like, okay, we're done. And I was like, really? Because it didn't feel like the scenario was over. And she told me that I had missed the last. She said, you were almost at the end, but not quite. And she said that, and I still had to keep going with the test. And this is when I say this is where margin for error comes in. So yes, I missed a couple sentences. Hopefully there were no scoring units in those sentences. There probably were, but hopefully not. And if there were, there may be going to be 3. And if I miss 3, 4 scoring units, I'm not going to fail the exam. So you have to be able to tell yourself that, because otherwise you're going to launch into panic, and then you're not going to do well for the end of the exam, and that's going to hurt you more than running out of time. So I say this on the state exam, I think you get 21 minutes. And I don't hear as many stories about people running out of time on a state exam as on the federal. So that is where this differs a little bit. They make you have quicker pacing. But again, it's not about rushing. It's about being thorough. If you start rushing through, you're going to miss stuff, and that's going to hurt you more. This section has about 875 to 925 words, 76 scoring units, as we just said. The type of language, so you're going to see cross-examination, you're going to see low register and profanity. So again, it's like typical high register attorney talk, and then low register slang and profanity. You are allowed 2 repetitions. So that means that at 2 different times during the consecutive exam, you're allowed to ask for them to repeat themselves. That's really important. I would say don't use them up right away. It's nice to know you have them. So sometimes it's actually I've taken a bunch of exams because I've taken the state exam twice because I failed it the first time. I've taken the federal exam, I took the medical exam, and I took the court exam again for French. So that's like a bunch of times, right? And I think there have been a couple times that I've taken these exams that I didn't actually use the repetitions, but knowing that they were there made me feel really like safe. But obviously it's better if you can use them for a longer utterance. So my advice would be get as much information as you can in your notes, listen as hard as you possibly can. And then once you've done that, you ask for a repetition and you fill in the blanks. So you go back over that same set of notes and you make it better. On the topic of note taking, almost always when people tell me they have trouble with their notes, they're actually having trouble listening. Like I would say 90% of the time. It's usually not a note. I mean, sometimes it's a combination, but people overlook the fact that we have to hear the information in order to get it into our notes. And the better you are at note taking, the fewer notes you take, because in the process of improving your note taking skills, you necessarily have to improve your listening skills. So don't overlook that. If you're struggling with notes, if you're struggling with memory, analysis, active listening, visualization really shouldn't be overlooked, but they usually are. So I really encourage you to work on that alongside with your notes, because yes, good note-taking technique is crucial, but it starts with hearing what's being said and analyzing what's being said. And a lot of times people end up with words in their notes that are the same as the words that the speaker has said, but they're not connecting the dots. What's in between those words and what are the ideas under the surface? So this is definitely something that's a skill that takes time. So as soon as you get your results next month, you're going to need to start studying for next summer. And if this is one of your weaknesses, you want to address it right away, because that's usually where people lose points. It's on omission in the consecutive section. Bonus, not in the handbook. Approximately how long will the longest utterance be? 50. So this is again similar to the state exam. I have not gotten a straight answer as to what the longest utterance will be, but between 50 and 60 words is a reasonable assumption, and it's 50 in a state exam. So again, it's not that much different from what you might have seen on the state exam. So then this is the part that you won't have seen on a state certification test. This is the scary one. It actually doesn't have a ton of scoring units, so that's good to know going in. It's 35, so obviously you still want to do a good job, but like maybe that'll make you a bit less scared of this portion. So it's expert witness testimony, and this goes at 160 words a minute, which I guess is kind of realistic because that's what's going to happen. You get an expert witness on the stand, they're not going to be speaking. 120 is slow. Yeah, 160 is actually probably medium. So you'll get people, if you know, when you become federally certified, you'll get people speaking faster than this. It lasts 5 minutes, it's 160 words per minute, and here you need to be ready for things like DNA, computer forensics, firearms, drugs, serology. So you're going to want to study terminology, but more importantly, you're going to want to listen to these kinds of topics in both languages and understand them. I'm guilty of the whole memorize through glossaries thing myself. It's just like, okay, I'm gonna get my DNA glossary and I'm gonna memorize deoxyribonucleic acid, and you know, but if you can like understand an explanation about what DNA is, and you can understand that explanation in both languages, and then you drill the terminology, you're gonna be much better off. If you can go and see pictures of a firearm or ask your friendly sheriff's officer to disassemble it in the courtroom like I did when I was studying for the federal exam, and they can show you the different parts and how it works and what their names are in at least one of the languages, then you'll understand what a hammer is when you go to look it up. Then you'll understand what a sight is and all of these different parts of the gun. If you just memorize parts and you don't really understand them and you can't picture them in your head, it's more likely that you'll be making inaccuracies. So what the point that I'm trying to make here is that yes, it's terminology, but the important thing is to understand these concepts in context. And YouTube is your friend here. Not so much for interpreting. You have plenty of real interpreting materials that are specifically for this. So you don't need to go try and interpret stuff on YouTube, but you should watch YouTube videos by experts in serology and drugs and firearms and computer forensics in both languages so that you understand these topics.
Athena,
Yeah.
So if I may, in my case, I'll be the first to admit I'm not very knowledgeable on guns, but I'm not gonna make any arguments either way. This is not the proper forum. But I actually went to a friend's house. He has guns because I told him I had to take a test and kind of needed to understand what was going on there. So he actually showed them to me. Somebody even suggested the best way to really understand how to use guns is to go to a shooting range. So I'm not telling anybody to do that, but it may be helpful.
Yeah, no, sorry, I didn't mean to be flipping slides while you were talking. Yeah, no, it's getting to know the subject, right? This is important, and it's not like you said, it's not about whether you're for or against any of the stuff. I don't, we're at least not we're going to advertise we're being pro drugs here or pro any of the other things. But the point is, you have to understand it. So, like I have done, like, this is like do as I say, not as I do. I've done that thing where you memorize the glossaries, but then I forget the terminology because I don't understand it. So if you understand it, then the terminology will stick better. Then you can go crazy with the glossaries, but make sure you really understand this stuff. And understand too that this is a test of interpreting. It's not a test of terminology itself. So part of it is your ability to keep track of things and to keep up and to allow there to be some technical terms that you can't get but not get thrown off, because in real life that'll happen too. You will have moments where you don't know how to interpret everything that's being thrown at you, and you need to be able to keep your cool. So part of it is just like going in blind to any of these topics and saying, okay, well, how good am I at understanding it just based on what I'm hearing right this second, and how can I articulate that in my other language? All right, so tips for the oral exam in particular: start studying now. That's one. And like I just said, remember that it's not a test about vocabulary, it's a test about technique. So vocabulary is important, but so is, to a greater degree, your ability to listen, your ability to analyze, your ability to process, visualize, take notes, have good decollage, have good reading comprehension for the site, good note-taking skills for the consecutive. All of that technique is really important. Use study materials efficiently. In a moment, I'm going to give you some resources. I have some really good recommendations for study materials. Probably a lot of you have the ACEBO materials, those are like the most well-known. If you have them, I would bet that most of the people in this room have never either read the introductions or done any of the warm-up exercises. That stuff is valuable. Do it. I am still shadowing. I'm in my like 13th year of interpreting, I would say, and I've spent, more than a decade learning about all this stuff and studying for the millions of exams, and I think I might be taking another exam next spring. I think it's happening. So anyway, every single time I study, I go back to the basics, and the basics include shadowing, dual tasking, and word phrase substitution. If you're not familiar with those, go open up the ACEBO book that's been sitting on your shelf for the last 20 years and read the explanation about what it is. And I'm happy to elaborate more if people ask. But the point is that those warm-ups are really good. The ACEBO book also has a bunch of memory exercises at the beginning of the consecutive portion. If you think that you're having trouble with your notes, do those memory exercises. You'll be like, but I don't understand. She just wants me to give a summary. And why am I giving you a summary? Like, it's not stuff that you're actually doing when you interpret, but it's stuff that addresses the little pieces. It's like if you're learning, I don't know, if you're going to play a soccer game. Before that soccer game, you might drill shooting balls to the goal. You might drill having the ball go back and forth between your feet, or doing a bunch of head balls, or what do you call them? I don't remember. It's been a long time since I played soccer. But the point is, you do all of these little things that are part of it, and then you put it all together and you play the game. And that's like interpreting. You do a bit of memory, you do a bit of visualization, you do a bit of analysis, and you put it all together, and that's what interpreting is. So when you use your study materials, make the most of those materials. And this is crucial. First, you do an interpretation and you record yourself. Then you listen to that recording, because recordings do not lie. You listen to the recording and you compare it with the transcript. And that's why I say don't interpret YouTube videos. There's so many materials that have been created just for this. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. So use ACEBO, use the InterpreTrain, use the other ones that I'm going to recommend in a couple slides, and analyze your recording. see what you added, what you changed, and what you omitted, and then you go back and do it again. Once you've maybe looked up some terminology and you've understood what your mistakes were, you go back and do it again, and you keep doing it. Yes, you will get familiar with it. No, it won't be a blind run again, but interpreting involves so many different moving parts that you will continue to get benefit from the same exercise. And there are some exercises that I have done for hour, hours at a time. I've done them over, I think exercise 10 out of Edge 21 in ACEBO is about numbers. I think I've done that exercise 20 times and I've never managed to get every single number. But you can bet that my skill at interpreting numbers has increased because I did it again and again. So it's not cheating to do it more than once. And I say that because a lot of people think that it is, and then they lose a valuable resource that they would have. The other thing that you need to do is find ways to address your weaknesses and understand what your weaknesses are. So it's not about saying, oh, that was good or that was bad. It's about identifying what specifically went well and what specifically you need to work on. So you want to look at the mistakes that you're making and say, okay, is there a pattern to any of these mistakes? Are they language issues, in which case I need to go work on my language skills? What specifically with language? Is it prepositions? Is it subjunctive? Is it, noun, adjective agreement? Whatever it is, you look for those patterns. And if it's on the technique side, you look for that. Okay, on the long utterances, I always seem to miss the end. That's a pattern. I say that because I actually did that. When I was studying, I realized I was always missing the end of the utterances. And I realized that the reason why it was happening was because I was starting to worry that I would forget. And because I was worrying, I would miss what they were saying. So I found out what my problem was. I found out what my pattern was. And then I asked myself, why is this happening? And once I realized it was because I was worried, then I was like, okay, I'm going to let myself make mistakes. So that way I'm not worried about it because I'm just going to assume I will, but I'm going to pay more attention and I'm going to keep that attention active through the end of the utterance. And now I can listen to that 60-word utterance from the beginning to the end. And, maybe I'll still have an omission here or there, but it's a lot better than when I was studying for it 10 years ago. When it comes to terminology, this is my last tip for the oral exam, use interactive methods. So first, learn about them in context like we talked about, but then use things like audio glossaries or Quizlet, where Quizlet is awesome. You can download it on your phone and you can use it on your computer. And then whenever you're like, I don't know, waiting to pick up something or you just have a spare moment, you can use the glossaries that you've imported to generate tests and to play games and word association and use flashcards. So it's a way of interacting with the terminology, and that will help you to learn better than just reading off a glossary. The audio glossaries that I made with my study group, Federal Interpreters Are a Bust, we did that like 8 years ago. We have made those available on my website on the resources section. So you can take a look at that. There's a link to a Google Drive box where I have stuff on DNA, serology, like all those expert witness type things that can come up. And an audio glossary is just, it's the term in English, pause, term in Spanish. So then you're doing the dishes, you're walking your dog, you're folding laundry. You can double as a language nerd, put on your headphones and try to say the word out loud. You hear it in English, you say it in Spanish, and then whether or not you said it in Spanish, you'll hear the actual translation to get it right. I have done this studying for most of the exams that I've taken, and it's really helped with vocabulary. So resources in particular for studying study materials, and that means it comes with audio and with the text. So that way you can hear it and then you can see it and compare. Interpret Train has an awesome set of resources, which will be included in our master class, which I'll tell you about in a moment for those of you who are coming in for the second hour. ACEBO, pretty much everything. So they have Edge 21, Interpreter's Edge, and the Turbo edition. All of those are really, really useful. University of Arizona also has, in addition to their written mock exams, they have this whole package that includes expert witness stuff. They've got a lot of good material on drugs and firearms and serology and things like that. They're a little bit unorganized, at least they were when I used them a few years ago, but they're still worth it because they have a lot of very specialized stuff that's particularly good for the federal exam. And I put myself on there. I hope you don't mind, but I do have a bunch of resources on my webpage that you should feel free to check out.
Athena,
Yeah,
may I add another company that may also be your competition?
sure.
Are you okay with that or no?
Yeah, I don't mind. I like advertising people who help people out.
So trance interpreting was crucial for me, and the company had a bunch of different exercises with a bunch of different expert witnesses, so you can practice your simultaneous and also learn from a specific field.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, I've heard good things about them. The only reason I don't recommend them personally is because I've never used them, but I have heard a lot of good things from them. So I appreciate you mentioning that. Okay, so for those of you who were here last hour, I apologize for the repetition, but I do want to let the people know who just came in that I'm super excited. Virginia Valencia and I have gotten together. She's from Interpretrain, if you know them, they're out in California. We are creating the Federal Oral Exam Masterclass. We have had about a month of meetings already. We've planned out our schedule. We're working to iron out the details. But we should have enough of the details ironed out by October 20th that we'll be hosting an info session. We may have another one after that, but we're definitely going to be having one on October 20th. The idea of this oral exam masterclass is to bring people together and almost have like a college course to study for the exam. So it's going to be from March through early June 2021, leading, see, I corrected the slide, leading right up to when the exam is going to be taking place. We'll have one intensive at the beginning and one at the end. So that'll be like 4 days of meeting with the instructor. For the rest of the time, it'll be twice weekly with Virginia and or myself. And that's a total of 68 classroom hours. And then we're going to break you into smaller study groups to form what we're calling pods. And that'll be an additional 24 study group hours where you'll be working through the material together, and you'll also have homework. So this is a big commitment, and it's something you only want to do if you're ready for that kind of a commitment, but it should give you that push in the butt that you need to work through the material, to have moral support, to have instructors there to answer your questions and to help guide you through the process. In terms of materials, we'll be using the Interpretrain Federal Study Package. Virginia spent years, literally years, gathering this material. It's all from real life court proceedings, but then it was modified by interpreters who were like trained federally certified interpreters. And I think she had a bunch of people on her team. I think there was somebody who would like help to write a dictionary or something like that. But in any case, she got people to modify them so they would be good for interpreting practice. So we will be using those for our study materials, and we'll also be spending time at the beginning with her symbols and note-taking technique package. So that will all come together with the master class, and the homework in the classroom will involve those materials. We're considering using materials from other sources as well. We're still ironing that out, but we'll definitely included will be the Interpretrain Federal Practice and the note-taking technique. And one thing that's also important to mention is that we're going to be providing guidance on study self-care. So how can you stay sane while studying for this exam? Because it's brutal, it's really hard. We have our egos on the line, and it's really challenging to manage all of that. And so we'll be addressing that as well. It's going to be a bilingual course, and the idea is that it'll probably be mostly taught in Spanish because that's the language that most of us don't use enough, or that has been very contaminated by English. So we'll have the chance to use it quite a bit during class. And the info session will be October 20th, 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 Pacific. I'll let you guys do the math. We're somewhere in between. My apologies. I didn't do it for you. Gonzalo, if you're able to scroll up in the chat, maybe you can find the link that I put for the info session, because if you're interested, you can register just to come to that, where Virginia and I will be leading for you. So I don't know if you're able to find it in the chat, you can bring it down.
Totally interested.
Cool. Yeah, I can find that link in a second too if Gonzalo can't. So that's the Federal Oral Exam Masterclass. We're super excited about it. And if you want more information about it, you can come at the end of the month to our info session. Other than that, this is my website where I do have a bunch of resources and blogs, and I also offer private and small group coaching. So if you're looking for something less intense than the one I just described, but you still want some guidance, then feel free to send me an email. And I also have monthly webinars. So I have a mailing list that I'll put in the chat again, because things keep getting lost because there are 75 of us, which is amazing. These are my upcoming webinars, simultaneous memory and note taking. And I can put those links in the chat as well. And you get a discount for attending here. So if you want to come to any of those webinars, you can put in coffee 10 and that'll get you $10 off. And these were the Facebook groups. Somebody was asking earlier what the Facebook groups were. So these are them. Athena Sky Interpreting is my own. French Interpreting Corner is if you have French. I have a bigger one that's for certification in general. And then I really recommend joining Future FEDES for the federal certification in particular. And then we have Tony Valles Resource Center for Certified Interpreters, which is a really big community and it's a really nice way to share. So that's all that I have to say. As I told the people for the first hour, I was like, this will be informal. And then I was like, 100 people signed up. I think I need a PowerPoint. So that's the PowerPoint. I hope that it's helpful. And I want to open the floor back up to all of you if you have questions really about anything, but specifically the oral exam, because that's what we're here for this hour. And yeah, all of those were Facebook groups.
No sean tímidos.
Hablen.
Athena,
Dime.
Sylvia Gomez here. So I was actually planning on buying the resources from Interpretrain that online. They have like a whole course. Should I wait for the masterclass? Are they the same materials that you're going to use?
Those are the materials that we'll be using, and that's a good question. I wonder if maybe, yeah, maybe wait. If you're planning on going to the masterclass, then it'll come with that package. So I might not get it right this second. I might wait until you sign up for the masterclass. Send me an email though if you're like concerned about it and you wanted to. Go ahead.
What should I do from now till March? Because you know, clocks are ticking, and I need to be practicing. Like I really want to pass it this time.
Right, totally. I was actually having this conversation with Virginia today, and we were going to talk about what to do about that. My suggestion would be, if you do plan on attending the masterclass, then use other materials to practice between now and March. So the recommendations that I have are Acebo. They have Edge 21, Interpreter's Edge, and the Turbo supplement. So all of those are really effective. And there's also University of Arizona. That'll keep you busy for 5 months if you have those materials between now and March. And then you can use Interpretrain's materials with the course, because we're going to be going step by step, starting with lab 1 all the way up to lab 44. So we're going to have all of those labs guiding you through them. So I would recommend using those other materials between now and March. But if you want to follow up with me on this, feel free to send me an email, and I'm going to put it in my chat right now. And then I'll talk to Virginia too to see if we have any other advice for you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Sure. So I've just put my email in the chat. I'm going to put some links in as well. So I wanted to make sure that you know about the info session link. I'll grab that, and feel free to turn on your mic if you had any more questions or comments from anyone.
Athena, hi, this is Lauren Egan. I have a quick question. I am court certified. What is the big difference between the court test and the court exam and the federal exam?
For the oral?
For the oral. I know that the written is going to be a huge difference.
Yeah.
The oral, what should I be?
The oral exam,
studying?
the site translation is similar in length. It's probably going to be higher register. So I would be prepared for higher register legalese for the site translation portion. But other than that, it's similar to the state in terms of its length. It's also a little bit shorter. So you get 1.5 minutes to review instead of 2 minutes. And then you get 3.5 minutes to render instead of 4. So you have to be a bit quicker. For the simultaneous, the first simultaneous is very similar to what you'd see on the state, but the second simultaneous is quicker, and it includes expert witness, the technical language. And for the consecutive, again, it's pretty similar to the state exam, but it's a shorter time frame that they give you.
but their renditions are not any longer than the state.
I have not been able to get a straight answer about that, but if they are longer, they're not longer by a lot. So
Okay.
it's more like maybe 60 words instead of 50. I tried to get that answer and I failed. So if anyone has the better information than me, feel free to share it. But yeah, it's the utterances are not necessarily much worse than they would be on the state exam.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. I said this earlier, but I repeat it for our newcomers. If you got an email from me, that means you're on my mailing list. But if you got this link from a friend or from Facebook, then you're not necessarily on it. So I'm going to put my mailing list form here. You can sign up to make sure you get the follow-up email from me where we talk about everything that we covered here. So I have in the chat, fairly close to the bottom now, we have link for info session and link for the mailing list. And then I'm just going to give you the links to my upcoming webinars again. And that was the Coffee 10 discount. So I'll put those links as well. And I'm going to send a follow-up with all of this stuff too. All right, any tips on getting good and long-term study buddies? Many kind of fizzle in commitment. Yeah, you know, I've struggled with that. I think it's a matter of really sort of, it's almost like an interview process where you're gonna have to like get to know people and really talk, be upfront about it. Like, this is what I'm hoping to do. I want to meet weekly. I really want to meet for this length of time. But I would encourage you to be upfront with people, and I think that on day 1 or 2, you get a pretty good idea of whether you're compatible or not as study partners. And I've been persistent. So I've gone through a lot of different study partners and not everyone has worked out, but eventually somebody does. And then it's really good.
Athena,
Yeah.
if I may add something onto that. So I was fortunate enough to be part of a group and it worked out great. But you have to realize that most of us, if not all, we're all adults. Everyone's schedule is going to change. People's objectives are going to change. So in the end, maybe for the last 2 to 2.5 months, we kind of just studied on our own. And every now and then we would just get together on Zoom or Skype and just have, I don't know, debriefing sessions. So just because your study buddies cannot study, what I'm trying to say is you need to continue with your studying. That's my opinion. Because if you expect 5 people to stick to a schedule where you have to meet maybe weekly, maybe bi-weekly for 5 months, I just don't think that's going to work. So great to have the study buddies to start with, and if you guys can make it that far or that long throughout the whole process, that's amazing. But just be realistic that it's very unlikely to happen for that amount of time, I don't think.
Yeah, especially for bigger groups. And I'll give the floor to Tony, and I also see Daniel has his hand up. But for bigger groups, especially, it can be actually kind of inefficient to get work done. I think that the best size is like 2 or 3 people. And you need to use your time wisely, because unfortunately it doesn't count as studying if you're just sitting there chatting. It's very fun, and I've made some very good friends while studying, but it doesn't count as studying. So yeah, I think, try to find committed people who have the same vision as you do. But like Gonzalo says, you're also going to have to be prepared to study on your own. Tony, go ahead.
Well, this particular topic, yeah, is one that I'm passionate about, as you know. So I'm part of a team, the federal exam of that team is so committed to the team. They're committed to meeting. We meet on Sunday mornings for 2 hours every Sunday morning without fail. And then some members of the team even meet during the week. On a daily basis, we're doing exercises. Team members are posting exercises, again, that are optional. So we have materials that we agree as a team to work on during the week. And then on top of that, the team members are just constantly pushing themselves to do more and more and more. So here's the thing is that, again, I've got 7 people on my team and one is more committed than the next, right? We all kind of keep pushing each other. Now, it has happened that I've had somebody join the team and then at a certain point they drop off. And then so what I do is I just literally recruit to find somebody else to replace that person. But at this point, man, we are just locked and loaded. And it's very rare that I have a team member join that doesn't stick with us, because You know, we're all working towards success here, and I think that anybody that joins us knows it. And you know, it's just you know, again, it's something I'm very passionate about, and I'm very motivated and inspired on a daily basis by my team members and being part of this federal exam vanquishers team.
Awesome. I see we have questions from Daniel and then Giovanna and Igor. So we'll start with Daniel. Go ahead.
Yeah. In the state court exams, they have, I think it's like 5 variations of the of the exam. Is it similar for the federal court exam? Do they have variations, or if you fail it 1 year, are you gonna retake that exact same exam 2 years later?
They do have variation. So yeah, if you fail it in June, let's say, cross your fingers you don't, but in case you do, then you should be able to take it 2 years later. Giovanna, you had a question.
Hi, thank you. Yes, thank you for this session. Gonzalo, you mentioned something earlier. I think you said tens that you used to study, that you mentioned it might be Athena's competition.
I think it was
Transinterpreting.
Transinterpreting.
Transinterpreting. Oh, okay. Yes, I know who they are. For some reason, I thought I heard something else. Thank you.
You got it.
And Igor, go ahead.
Hi, good evening, Gonzalo's.
Hello.
Hi. I just wanted to piggyback on something that.
Ooh, hang on. Hang on. There is mute. There was some pretty bad feedback, and we're all interpreting.
Yeah, I think it's done now.
Okay.
The thing about groups, for example, my own experience when I passed the federal last year, I had a group of 3 people, and when it was basically like a horror movie, they were dying out. And what I just wanted to tell you guys is that it's great to have a group, but you have to create your own routine from the first day, so you don't use that as an excuse like, hey, this person or that person. If you have your own basic routine, when these characters in your movie, remember, you are the star of your own movie, when these characters in your movie start dying off, you still have your own thing to fall back on. Not all of us are as lucky as Mr. Valle that has a great study group. I had to do the last 3 weeks on my own, and these 2 guys that were in my group, well, I mean, good luck to them, they didn't pass. But if you have your own a strong system, guys, the sky's the limit.
Thank you for that. Yeah, study groups, when they're good, and it's part of it is like crafting that environment and making sure that people who join have the same vision and knowing what you're looking for. But like you say, that you can't use it as an excuse to replace solo interpreting practice. Both of those things do have to happen. I'm seeing, so there was a question in the chat about how many hours of study per week, and be as ambitious as you can when it's still realistic. That's my advice. Don't make a study plan that's so ambitious that you're not going to be able to follow through and then you just quit. Make something that challenges you but isn't impossible. Have days off, have rewards for yourself. Gonzalo recommended an hour and a half, 6 days a week, and an hour of vocabulary. Absolutely. I'm not going to say no to that. I used to, when I was studying for my exams, I would have 3 days a week minimum with like probably 2-hour sessions. So 6 hours a week, plus I ended up studying my vocabulary, like things like vocabulary and audio glossaries. You can do that on the fly. You can do it when you're out for a walk or you're doing your dishes. And so that's like extra for me, but sit down practice sessions at least 3 times a week. But you're gonna want to do more. And like sometimes you can, for me, it was helpful to say, okay, I'm using a certain material. Like I'm going to get my way all through Edge 21, every single exercise, and I'm going to do every single exercise multiple times. And so then it's like, okay, well, I have 3 months until the exam. How do I divide up my work so I can do that? And so then I would go by exercise rather than by hours per week. Are there other questions in the chat that I've missed? Because there's a lot of you, and so I may not have seen everything coming through. You can feel free to raise your hand virtually or even just put on the mic and just say, excuse me, I have a question. Feel free to to let me know if there's questions out there that haven't been answered.
Can't hear.
I hear somebody, but she sounds very far away.
Oh, I'm very far away. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't want to talk, so I'll
Better.
okay. The thing is, my question is regarding the groups and the masters. Are you gonna have mandatory groups to study? That's what I understood.
Yeah, so the master class is going to cover a lot of what you all were talking about, because it's going to force you to meet twice a week with your instructors, do two homework sessions per week, really, and then one night a week with your pod. So you're going to have a study group, mandatory built in. You're going to have your homework, and you're going to need to keep up with that, and you're going to have the classroom work. So it's really going to be like attending a college class for an exam. That's essentially what we're designing it to be. So you'll have all of those things. You'll have the individual time, you'll have instructor time in class, and then you'll have the pods where you're studying in groups.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. All right, we're almost at 9 o'clock Eastern. Any final questions? A bit off topic, and my apologies. I don't anticipate doing much Spanish-English court interpreting in Taiwan. Any tips on adapting these study materials and methods to make me a better Spanish to English written interpreter? When you say written interpreter, I'm assuming you mean translator. Any tips on adapting these? No, I don't think so, because I think these study materials are specifically set up for oral interpretation. I think you'd be better off studying translation directly to do that kind of thing. I don't have too much interpreting. I could help you with adapting interpreting materials for interpreting a different language, for example. But for going to translation, I think you're going to need to look specifically to that field for advice. I'm sorry. If I do think of anything, I'll follow up. What about the prep for the written test? Oh, using that prep material. I'm going to think on your question. Feel free to send me a follow-up email, and I will think if I have any suggestions for you. To be honest, my expertise lies with interpreting, so I don't want to tell you I know how to answer that question when I don't, but I'll think about it and see if I can help you with that. Do you feel like all the materials from the masterclass will cover all aspects of the federal, or will we need a supplement? Virginia and I met today and we're talking about it, and we are trying as much as we can to give you a comprehensive package. I think that if you attend our masterclass, you will have what you need. You will have the note-taking skills, you will have all three modes, you will get feedback from yourself and from partners and from the instructors as well, at least like in the class setting. So I think that it's going to be a very comprehensive preparation, but there's always something, right? There's always going to be something that you're like, oh, well, maybe this is missing, or that's, you may find that you want to supplement it, but I think that you'll find it to be pretty comprehensive. Is your masterclass somewhat similar to the Arizona Intensive? I would say yes, it's somewhat similar. So the Arizona Intensive, for those of you who don't know, is a very reputable program, and I'll promote my competition. I didn't go, but I've known many people who have, and they have had good experiences. That is a 2 or 3 week program, and it's very intensive every single day. Ours is spread out over 3 months. The idea is the same. It's to provide an intensive study for the federal exam. The materials will be different. So they use their materials, we're using ours. So it's a similar concept. The time frame is a little bit different, and it's using different materials. I like the fact that ours is spread out, because these things, you need to take your time to acquire these skills. And so you'll be able to get that going slowly but surely. And the price, by October 20th, when we have the info session, I can confirm that for you. I'm not trying to be coy. It's just that it hasn't been confirmed yet. And so I don't want to tell you now and then have it change. It's going to be a chunk, because it is a 3-month intensive program. We are going to have early bird pricing and some kind of payment plan available for those who need it. And I'll have all of those details ironed out by the end of the month. Okay, this has been a doozy of a couple of hours. I really appreciate everyone for coming and sharing their resources and asking their questions. By the end of this week, my hope is to have that follow-up email out for all of you. So if you have things you want included, like there were resources that you wanted to make sure ended up in that email, send them to me. If you're not on the mailing list, scroll up in the chat and make sure you sign up if you want to get that follow-up email. I think that's everything. This has been wonderful, and I hope that it was helpful for all of you. Thank you, Gonzalo. Thank you, Tony, and thank you, Igor, and thank you everyone who contributed to making this successful.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night.
Athena, are you taking off or are we debriefing or what?
I don't know. I hadn't decided. Here, I guess I'll stop the recording now. Stop the recording.
No pressure. You can say no.